You are listening to the Effective Statistician, episode number 53. What is the best career option for me? An interview with Oliver Schönborn-Kellenberger. Welcome to the Effective Statistician with Alexander Schacht and Benjamin Pieske, the weekly podcast for statisticians in the health sector designed to improve your leadership skills, widen your business acumen, and enhance your efficiency. Please follow me on LinkedIn because I regularly post there much more content, share additional things, tips and tricks, share other things that I have seen from other people. So lots of nice content there. So just hop on to LinkedIn. If you're not yet there, it's a very, very good professional platform, and just connect with me. In the interview today, we talk about very, very important things because it's all about career. And whether you want to change your job or you're just looking for your first job, or even if you consider to start your own company or work as a freelancer, we have a very, very good guest here because he has actually worked in all these different scenarios for himself. And so he can compare different pros and cons of these different setups. The podcast is created in association with PSI, a global member organization dedicated to promoting best practice and industry initiatives. Join PSI today to further develop your statistical capabilities with access to special interest groups, the video-on-demand content library, free registration to all PSI webinars, and much, much more. Just visit the PSI website at psiweb.org and become a PSI member today. Welcome to another episode of The Effective Statistician, and this time it's all about your career opportunities. And as usual, I have my co-host Benjamin with me. Hi Benjamin, how are you doing?
Hello Alexander, well, thank you.
And as a guest today we have Oliver Schönborn-Kellenberger. Hi Oliver, how are you doing?
Good morning, I'm good. Good morning Alexander and Benjamin, how are you?
Thanks. So...
Very good. Actually, just as we chatted shortly before the recording, we all graduated from the same university in Göttingen. And
yep. Indeed. Long time ago.
Long time ago. But this is not the topic today. The topic today is really speaking about different career options. And we will talk about a little bit of different company setups, pharma company, biotech companies, CROs. And of course, these CROs and companies we'll talk about, reflect, of course, their different setups, but every company, of course, has a little bit of a unique setup and a little bit of a unique culture. So you'll get a lot of information from it, but it's not always necessarily, the right thing. And of course, in the end, it's all people we work with. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's first, Oliver, maybe you can introduce yourself. What are you doing now and how did you get there in kind of a very, very short wrap up?
Okay, so I'm still working as a statistician in the pharma industry. I've set up my own companies about 5 years ago. It's an independent consulting company, and we do consult biotechs and large pharma companies in implementing adaptive trial design, especially in the early phase. And that's what I've been doing the last 5 years.
Okay, but you actually didn't start out that way directly. Initially, you started at a CRO. Why did you do that when you, after your diploma at university?
Well, very typical. I came out of university and I wanted to work in the pharma area, and I applied to several companies, and one of them was a CRO. And that CRO offered me a job, and that's why I went there, and which I took as a first step into the pharma industry. which was from a retro perspective a very good step because it gave me some very good insights in how CROs work, which also helped me a lot later in my life, in my pharma life.
How did it help you later on?
Well, because when you know how a CRO works, and later on as a sponsor, you need to oversee a CRO and you need to understand how they are setting up their business model. It helps you a lot to manage them, on how to manage them, to see what is their demand, how are they operating, and so you can better see what is their needs, what is their task that you need to give them, and what's the way how you communicate with them. So at the end, you get what you need in your outputs, and that's in our time. It's very important to have access to data, to be able to report data, and also to get all the results in a timely manner, because everyone wants to go into the next step in the development. They want to go into the next phase. They want to go into registration. So it's very important and it's very time critical. And I think that's what a lot of statisticians also feel is we are the bottleneck when it comes to presenting the data. And when you can manage your CRO and they're able to deliver in time, it helps you to deliver your results in time as well at the pharma company or your client.
Okay, that sounds a little bit more like a project management task. I mean, as we know, if this is a big overlap with statistician's task, but what actually is the statistics side, like where you see differences between the CRO and then also working at the pharma side?
Well, at the CRO, you usually get your protocol. So in the protocol, and if you're working with good companies, your protocol is already very, very detailed in terms of, which model will you use? What is the terminology that you use? Will you, if you have the time to event analysis, it should include all the censoring information. It should include everything about, missing data. We are now having this discussion about estimates. All this should be very clearly defined in the protocol. So when you get it at CRO, there is not a lot of times that you have actually impact on that. You get this presented. You don't have to develop this by yourself. In the pharma company, you are the one who writing those protocols. So you have to put much more effort into, how do you set up everything? Are you doing the right analysis? Have you covered everything? And that's a bit the difference that I experienced. So,
and is that what you also then brought you to your next step in the career, to a pharma side?
Yes. So when I was 2 years with a CRO, and after that I had the opportunity to join a large pharma company, and that was of course a big step. Coming out from a deliverable, from a service perspective into actually the other way around, into strategic perspective, to say, well, I can actually now write protocols, and now I can oversee the execution of those protocols. So that was from my perspective a very good next step.
Okay, so you really work then at the pharma side together with the CROs, as you mentioned, not in a let's say methodology part of the company where you've been involved really in stats, more in an academic or more in a
no.
Okay.
So I really changed the role from one side of the table to the other side of the table. So from doing the work in overseeing the work.
When you were working at the CRO, what was your kind of day-to-day jobs? How did that look like?
So the day-to-day job in the CRO is you have your protocol, and then the main task at the CRO is you're writing an analysis plan and you're overseeing the programming of the analysis. So a lot of times you have programmers do the basic tables like adverse events, like very simple frequentist descriptors analysis. And as a statistician, you were doing the more complicated things as soon as there were some inferentials in there. That was on your table. You need to program that. You need to validate other statisticians, and you need to validate the programmers. So you get programs, you get outputs, you need to look at them. You need to make, quality checks. Are they what the client would like to have? Are they corresponding to the SAP? That's kind of like your day-to-day business. And then when it comes to reporting, so when you lock your database, you also have to review the data. You have to make decisions about the populations. When you look at them, do they have major protocol deviations, things like that. And then that's what you present to your clients. Yeah.
And in terms of this programming efforts, did you do something similar than at Novartis, just on a kind of different level with Novartis programmers and with CRO programmers?
Yeah, so it's then when you're on the other side of the table, of course, a lot of times you have to prove the quality of the CRO. So you get the results and then you reprogram at least the key outputs most of the times by yourself. So you're rechecking if the CRO provides that. So there you're doing kind of the same thing. In terms of reporting, well, when it comes to pharma, you not only have usually the picture of your single study, which the CRO normally has, you also have the overview of your whole development program. And that sometimes means you also have to think about how you can merge studies, how you can bring study data together, how you report it, if we're talking about clinical summary of efficacy or clinical summary of safety. So that is something that you rather do at the pharma level. So it's more on the program level and not only on the single study level.
Okay. How long have you been then in this CRO?
So I was 2 years in the CRO.
2 years in the CRO. Okay.
Yeah, and then I joined Big Pharma.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what I mean then probably I was just wondering what the development options were different in a CRO or at a pharma company or the large pharma company, but maybe after 2 years there wasn't really like a big option for you at that time.
Yeah, well, to develop in CROs is they working from the service model. So you can of course become at a certain time, you start as junior statisticians or statisticians, and then you have the opportunity to become senior statistician. And then you can slowly develop. In terms of work, that doesn't change that much. Maybe at a certain time when you're more confident, they allow you to go to clients, to bid defense meetings, things like that. But the development opportunity, there is usually one head of biostats in a CRO, and that's one position, and not everyone can become that position. So the development opportunities are not that large at the CRO, but it gives you a good start and a good insight in how the market works and what are the needs. So for me, still, this has been 15 years ago. I'm still, having a lot of benefit seeing that side of the table. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would say that probably depends on the size of the CRO.
Of course.
Because I'm obviously working in one of the largest CROs, and there are definitely more than one head of something. But anyway, I agree. It might be that there are different development opportunities. But what about the pharma then? So how does it look like in a pharma company compared to the CRO?
Well, of course, in a pharma company, there's a larger bandwidth. So at least the one I worked, which was a very large company, they had the opportunity, to go into methodology group. You also had opportunities to switch indications. So to look at different therapeutic areas. You had the opportunity to go into early development or to go into late development, phase 4. So at least from a statistical perspective, there is much more fields that you could go to and experience yourself and actually switch also as well. So when I got to Big Pharma, I started in late phase. So I was on a phase 3 project in one indication, and then later on I switched into a completely other group, into oncology and also into early phase. So that was a very nice opportunity that was possible there, which wasn't possible at the CRO. At the CRO, usually you get your projects. You see different therapeutics areas, but you always get what it's been told that's the next project, and you don't have much choices in those regards, because that's what you obviously get at the CRO is a protocol and to execute the protocol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of people you're working with, so cross-functionally, how was that different from a CRO to the pharma point of view?
Well, so on a statistical and programming level, it was very similar. We all see the tendencies now in terms of global organizations. So when I worked at the CRO, we had some sites in the UK, and they were slowly starting up in India. So you learned, how to work internationally. But for the Big Pharma, that was almost the same. Yeah. So in terms of programming, statistics, and data management, I wouldn't say there was such a big difference. In terms of, and again, it's you look at the global development program, of course, at the pharma company, you also get in contact in contact with the stakeholders, those who are making the decisions. This is how we execute our clinical development program. This is, where we want to be, which indication, which label we would like to get. All those thoughts about, decision making, which program will we take forward, and that, of course, you don't get at a CRO. Yeah.
So in terms of working with other stakeholders, in terms of physicians, regulatory scientists, health outcome scientists, marketing, senior people that, more on the executive levels that make portfolio decisions, these type of people.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have any contact at your pharma side with people outside of the pharma, so beyond the CRO, of course, but with customers actually? So the customers of the pharma company, not the customers of the CRO.
Yeah. So in the areas I worked, I did not. So there it was purely development. Yeah. So but there was also, because I worked in phase 1 to phase 3. So there was not much focus at this time, in this time of the development, of course, on, patients, buyers, things like that. That was also the time when this slowly started to up. When I started in pharma, this wasn't such a big topic. It became later on. So there were new groups built for so-called health technology assessment groups that were supposed to build up, what's the value of your product, how do you discuss this with outside stakeholders? There was also the time, with in Germany, where we now have the GBA, that was just coming all. That was very new to everyone. And so there was a small group that had contact to that, but I myself did not have any interaction at that time point.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of change happening in the pharma sector overall. So things that were true maybe 20 years ago are not true anymore today.
Yeah.
How did your career move on then after Big Pharma?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm very thankful for everything I learned in Big Pharma, because you really see a lot of things, and that there's you can learn so much, and there's so many opportunities. But one thing at a certain time point that came to me is that decisions, at least in Big Pharma companies, are a lot of times political decisions. So your focus is not always, what you think about your drug and where you want to bring your drug. It's more about, we have 5 or 7 or 6 drugs in the same area. Which one is the best? And there's decisions, and there's a lot of layers of decisions. So, from a statistical perspective, there is your trial statistician, there is your program statisticians, there is usually your unit head statisticians, and there's your global head of statisticians, and everything needs to be discussed with every layer. And you're spending a lot of time having those discussions, which from a pharma perspective is good and makes sense, but from the drug development perspective, sometimes is limiting you. And I said to myself, I actually want to go out to a small company, to biotech company, and I want to learn, what is it when you have to focus on your drug. You have 1 or 2 drugs, and that's your value, and you have to, bring that to a decision point where you say, well, it's worth to develop this further or to stop development of that. So everyone in a company is focused on that decision, and that was a thing that I really would like to experience. And so I went out of Big Pharma and went to a smaller biotech company, which wasn't that small anymore at that time point, but still had this kind of flair.
So when you went to that small biotech company, how many statisticians were there at the time?
3. So There were 3, but we were just bought by a large pharma company. And with that, we had slowly coming in those layers that we didn't have before.
Which is probably not completely unusual for a biotech pharma company to be bought. So I think that is... that very well reflects, the overall trend. There is the big pharma companies, of course, they could merge as well. just looking into the history of Pfizer, it merged quite a lot. And there's a couple of other pharma companies that also merged together. So if you think of Novartis, how they merged together, or Sanofi merged also a couple of times. So there's surely, always some point in your career where that can happen. And
Yep.
so when that happened at your biotech company, how was that for you?
Well, it was even a bit more complicated. So, of course, for me, everything was new. It's a new company, so it's a new environment. So you start learning anyway on how things were. But for people who were previously there, I know some of them were not so happy, and some of them left the company. I mean, it's our daily business, and from my perspective, it wasn't. I didn't have much difficulties with that because I just started new anyway. So getting adapted to that situation was not so difficult from entering a new company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in the time when you were at this smaller biotech company with just 3 statisticians, did you see that it was so much different to the very large company where you had maybe 300 or 500 statisticians?
Well, one of the things that was different for me was that I had a feeling if you're a small group of statisticians, you're valued much more in that company than you're valued in a larger company. I mean, if you're in a company where you have like 200, 300 statisticians, there's a lot of expertise, there's a lot of statisticians there. If you're a small company, and there's only 3 people who have a certain knowledge, and not only a certain knowledge about statistics, but also about data management, about programming, about drug development, about how you submit a drug, things like that. People come much more often to you and ask you and discuss this with you and involve you also in decision making. Yeah, so they come and say, "Well, Oliver, we have an important meeting. Can you come and join? We would like to discuss this and this strategy and what we're doing there." So you're in terms of your team, you're much closer together, and that was a very nice and good feeling. Yeah.
I can believe it is. And how fast did the change then come? I mean, you started with 3, you said, and was it basically that just 3 and then 1 left and then 100 other came? So, or was it kind of a separate company within the big company? How did?
Yeah, so that was very quickly. So what happened is we had one project which was very successful. And because it was very successful, the large pharma company just bought that, bought that biotech company, said, well, we actually, this is so important for us, we would like to develop that by ourselves. So what they've done is they closed the site and took the project to themselves. So that was a very quick change. And I had the opportunity, or I was offered the opportunity to stay in the big pharma company, maybe to move locations, but to stay. But at that time point, I just came out of a big pharma company, and I had reasons why I didn't want to be there and experience this new field. So I made the decision not to stay with them and to leave the company.
Mm-hmm. Just a moment in terms of the biotech company. If you think back, you had just 3 statisticians there. And of course, that was probably even smaller from a stats level than the PRO you originally started with directly after university. So in terms of your career options at a biotech company, is that then so much different to CRO as a statistician?
No, so of course it was very clear. If you're at a biotech company, in terms of if you want to keep doing your statistical work, there's not much development opportunities. There's you have your projects and that what you work on. Sometimes there is some kind of functional level who oversees certain things, but there is no real head of biostatistics. But the nice thing about that is you're the responsible person. You're the key person for this task. So you make the decisions, you make the proposals, you are working with the team. So, if you're not only looking on how to become head of biostatistics, but if you also say, I want to make decisions on drug development, then this is a very nice opportunity at biotech company, because there you're really involved in decision making.
Wouldn't it then be also an option to work in a very small CRO? I mean, it sounds to me like a very small CRO that is usually working closely, like partnering with one bigger company, that pharma company, and therefore maybe having almost 100% of the work dedicated to that one probably component or a company. So where the statisticians are really involved deeply, and there's probably just 2 statisticians, few data management programmers, so not a separation of functions as we see in larger companies. So would it be then basically the same opportunities that you experienced in the biotech company?
Well, I haven't worked at a small CRO. I'm working now with a lot of small CROs from a sponsor perspective again, but we maybe come to this later. At least my experience is still, when you get into the project or into the program, it's a single perspective. You usually get your protocol, or in a lot of times, at least you get the synopsis, and you're not seeing the full program. You usually see one study of that. So at least from my perspective, it's not so similar. And the other difference is, if you're in a biotech, your focus is really, just 1 or 2 products that you have. In a CRO, you usually have 3 or 4 or 5 projects, which are completely independent. So that's for me still a difference what I see. But yes, I mean, if you're working with small companies, with other small companies, there's some opportunities at CROs as well to give that kind of input. And a lot of times, I mean, I really like, when I now work with CROs, I really like to have the interactions with their statisticians and to get their input and their thoughts on the protocol. Unfortunately, and this might be again on this, get to bid defense meetings, bring their statisticians who have, really their statistical thoughts about the protocol. A lot of those times it's more talked about monitoring, about other functions, and not really about, the statistical methodology. So
yeah, that's what I also experienced in the past. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my last 5 minutes.
So in terms of the then changing from the small biotech companies that was bought, you took a leap and started your own company. What did you like about that?
Well, of course, you're completely independent now. I mean, you have to, you can do what you want. You can focus on what you want. And if that works, and if you have clients that, like the way you work, it's very beneficial, because you have all the freedom. You can choose your project, you can choose your clients, you can choose the work that you would like to do. And that's, of course, a very different step than everything that I have done before. And that's a really nice thing. Of course, I had an advantage. I'm specialized in a certain kind of statistical methodology when we talk about Bayesian adaptive designs. There's not that many statisticians currently who have that knowledge and also have the experience of running such trials. And that was really the advantage when I started my own company. So that I can provide this information and, the setup and the running of such trials to smaller biotechs who don't have statisticians in-house, or, who just don't know how to set up such trials.
But you just said you can choose your vendor, your clients. But of course, that's a very, very nice situation to be in. But how did you get up with clients in the first place?
Well, so since I've been a long time in pharma, I had built up quite a network. A lot of people who I worked with at the big pharma company who have left the pharma company, running now biotechs, and they said, we would like to have a certain kind of adaptive trial run in our company, but we don't find anyone who is able to run that. And they came to me and they said, well, can you run such trials? And I said, yes, I've run such trials, and I can provide you also in all kind of supports around that. And that's how it actually started up. So it was really, the benefit really was, I had a large network coming out of those companies. and people approaching me saying, well, you would like to work with us because we don't have a statistician in-house. Can you help us?
Yeah, it's a comfortable situation. It seems to be a shortage of statisticians in general. So
yes. Yeah, I mean that's the other big thing. I mean that's we are in a situation where we say there is not that many from us here. Yeah, there's not that many from us that have experience, and that really puts us in a comfortable situation.
Yeah, it's really kind of a employee market where employers need to sell their positions to statisticians to find them. And
we know it will not end because and we know it will not end because everyone is talking about big data, everyone is talking about personalized medicine, everyone is talking about how can we use all the data that we have, and in a lot of cases people don't even talk to statisticians yet, and this will come in the future even much larger. So statisticians are really needed there, and unfortunately or fortunately for us at this time point is there's not that many out there who can actually do that work.
Yeah, maybe just one more. You're saying you're your own boss, so that means that you are really you and yourself, and you don't have any people with you that you are responsible for. It's really you, or do you have somebody like contracted or involved or bring into the business as well together?
No, so we started up with a freelance model. So I had 2 to 3 freelancers working for me on smaller projects. We actually have hired now the first person, and actually on the way to hire the next person. So it's not just me. When I started the company, we were 2 people. We are now 3 to 4 people.
Okay. So when you went for yourself, you went actually with someone else together and founded a company. Okay.
Yes. I wasn't by myself. We've done this with 2 people because we've seen the opportunity saying, well, Bayesian methodology is coming into pharma industry, and we can just provide that information. And that is still a trend that we'll see and that will come, especially with all the discussions about umbrella trials and multiple extension arms or multiple indication arms, things like that. And that's where you need just a new methodology of statistics, and where the current methodology is just not providing sufficient.
Yeah. So you directly had your unique selling proposition ready when you started your company, which is really good. But looking back, what would you have liked to have known before you started your company, which is by the way called Cogitas? Do I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Cogitas. It comes from Latin. It's a mix from cogitare, which is thinking, and ars, which is art, so the art of thinking.
Okay, nice.
Well, of course, if you start your own company, there's a lot of other skills that you need to learn. There's a lot of other skills like bookkeeping, the regulatory part of it, SOPs, all those kind of things that, we are working in a highly regulated environment. So these are all the things that usually when you work at the company, they have them. They have everything in place, and that is something that you need to set up. And one of the learnings we had in the first year is, we cannot do everything by ourselves. We have to find people from the outside who can, take off some of those tasks from us, like bookkeeping, and we pay those people rather than, we try to do everything really by ourselves.
Yeah. I think that is the key thing. You need to have a good network of people that you work with outside of your company. Yeah,
that's the outsourcing thing. That's why CROs exist.
Yeah. And even though CROs outsource a lot, I'm pretty sure.
But for example, bookkeeping. No, but just looking back now, like to your career. So what would you say is the most important career advice in terms of choosing the right company for maybe, let's say, new statisticians or maybe statisticians with some experience? So for the listeners of the podcast.
Yeah. So what really helped me is, and I just can encourage everyone who is getting into that field, not only focus on the statistics. The statistics is it's a fun part. It's something that we are sure about, that we know how to do that. But also look around, look what the other people do around, how does your programmers do their work? How does the data management do their work? How does the global medical lead, sees the project, things like that. Look around. There's many opportunities. There's many things that you can learn outside of just statistics. And I think that's just a very good and good thing. And that's still something I'm having a lot from, just knowing how those functions, those other people work and how they see drug development, because at the end, it's a team effort. And, if we understand our team members and if we see how they think, it also gives us the opportunity to maybe move into other directions. So I have seen statisticians becoming project managers. I have seen statisticians becoming, more programmers. I have seen statisticians who said, I'm doing health technology assessment. So, just really looking over your own job. And that is something I can just advise everyone to do. Yeah. And you can do this in your CRO, and you can do this at your pharma company, and you can do this if you have your own company. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That was a very, very nice interview. I really enjoyed it. And I think there was a lot of very, very good learnings and advice for the listeners. Thanks so much, Oliver. Just one last thing. If people want to find your company, where do they do that?
Well, you find me on the internet, coguitars.com, and you find myself on LinkedIn and all the social networks. So just drop a message, write an email.
So for anything about Bayesian design in early phase, you're the guy to go to.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot, Oliver.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
This show was created in association with PSI. Next week, we actually cover a question from one of the listeners of this podcast, so from someone from your side. If you want to also get a question answered, just send me an email to alexander@theeffectivestatistician.com, and I'm very, very happy to include that into our editorial calendar. If you have a suggestion for an interview guest, that's also a good idea. Of course, together with the topic. Thanks for listening. Please visit theeffectivestatistician.com to find the show notes and learn more about our podcast to boost your career as a statistician in the health sector.